starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.
Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm DJ Moises and today's conversation is brought to us by Coffee First. When does political speech cross the line into an impeachable offense? Today we look deeper to think better. Days 8 and 9 of the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte centered on the testimony of NBI Director Melvin Matibag. He took the witness stand to explain the Bureau's investigation into Vice President Duterte's controversial public statements concerning President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. His testimony sought to explain how the NBI assessed whether these statements constituted actionable threats. One of the most legally significant moments of the proceedings was the debate over the affidavit of retired police officer Arturo Las Cañas. The issue was whether the Senate Impeachment Court could consider the affidavit as part of the NBI's investigative process. Article 4 is the impeachment charge which focuses whether those statements viewed in context amount to culpable violation of the Constitution and betrayal of public trust, making her unfit to continue serving as Vice President. Prosecutors sought to establish that Duterte's statements were not political rhetoric, but constituted serious threats that a vice president should not make. The defense, on the other hand, questioned the interpretation of Duterte's statements and challenged the weight the prosecution was giving them. This sets up one of the central questions before the senator judges. When does protected political speech cross the line into impeachable misconduct? Let's look deeper and think better. So let's begin. So if we are to look at days 8 and 9, in my view, not as a lawyer, but as an everyday Cebuano, I will have to say that, and then we'll also look at both sides, the prosecution and also the defense. So I'll start with the prosecution. So looking at days 8 and 9, in my view, the prosecution remains to be solid. But I also noticed that towards the end, or especially towards the end, so I'm referring to day 9, the prosecution was no longer as spectacular as when they opened it strongly. Kanang raving magitong reviews ni Attorney Ligutan in the beginning. And for me, I think instead na the prosecution will end on an even stronger note, kay solid man gid sila, as I mentioned, they somehow ended weaker compared to the preceding witnesses or testimonies. So I'll start first on the strong points which I saw on the prosecution's side. First, I like the fact that they really stick to constitutional accountability. So rather than they are continually arguing that this is a criminal conviction, they are just raising it as and they are repeatedly reminding the Senate that this is about constitutional kanang violation and that the Vice President is unfit to continue with her role as the second highest ranking official in the country. So diha sila ni single out. So this is not conviction beyond reasonable doubt, but they are trying to establish that the Vice President is unfit because of betrayal of public trust. The other thing also is makita sad nato ang ilang consistency in terms of their narrative that is centered around the video, no, the Vice President's video. So and for me, this is really one of their kanang strongest argument, kay wala man gyud makalalis kung fake ang video. So na-establish nila that the Vice President actually made those statements on record. So for me, that's their strongest argument, no? And I'm glad also that they relied heavily on that. And katong iyang, if so, that means na katong statement sa Vice President when she said, if I will be killed, etc., then it's not really like she was just heard saying it or kanang chismis ra to. The video alone will prove that it was really the Vice President who made that statement. So that remains to be their strongest point. The other thing also is, if we notice, the three witnesses na ilang gifield all came from NBI, no? So for me, that's also a strong statement because the fact that they make the testimony institutional, and in this case NBI, it merits, no, for the public to actually have an idea. And I keep on saying, by the way, public, because while it's the senator judges who will eventually vote for this, but this is still trial by publicity, no, because people are watching. So going back, so they are able to kanang kuan sa katong kuan, they are able to create a perception sa public na katong gyud ang threats that were pronounced by the Vice President were indeed serious. Okay, it's already the NBI that was tasked to investigate it. So that also is a strong argument. But in my view, again, not as a lawyer, but as an everyday Cebuano, ang testimony ni NBI director, in my view, was the weakest among the three. For me, the strongest was the first, katong kang senior agent, kanang John Mark Kalilong, kay he really had the capacity, no, to be able to say that the video was authentic. The second, in my case, was katong kang NBI Regional Director Jeremy Lotok. Although, again, as an everyday Cebuano, na-create po sa ako ang a little bit of doubt considering his career progression, no? Because nakita man sa dato na kanang ni jump gid siya into a regional director in BARM, no? Which is wala pud siya history to be there as far as culture or religion or understanding of the context. But I'm not saying actually na wrong to nga move, but for me it created a little bit of a doubt, no? But it was still a strong witness. Dito lang sila, in my case, medyo ninaog. I'm not saying completely down, but medyo ninaog lang when NBI Director Melvin Matibag kanang took the witness stand. And before ko makalimot, there are numbers actually that would show, and I hope dili na mo happen sa tuwa din sa Sunstar, na ang interest of the public about the impeachment is already decreasing, no? Kanang several media outlets already have reported nga, yes, it's still by the thousands, pero di na gyud siya the same when it opened. And we'll discuss that nga, no, because they also cited certain factors nga, no, ang interest sa mga Filipinos nagkanaog, no, as the day progresses. So in that context then, for me, mura na noog na stretch ang Article 4 because ang wala man gyud kayo contribution ang testimony, sad to say, no, of Melvin Matibag. Kay ira mang gi-explain ang wala niya gi-explain, but he tried to do other things, but na-box ra gyud siya that he was just there to explain the investigation process, but he was not able to establish intent. Nya mao man gud nay gihuwat sa public kay ang duha ka witness tinuod ang video. So ang kulang, ang missing link at that time was there really an intent? So mo to gihuwat sa public. And wala to siya na-deliver on the final day. Ang na-deliver lang is ang explanation of the investigation process in the overall. So for me, murag nataas ang trial, ninaog ang interest sa public, and then wala kaayo siya na-accomplish. And then they devoted duha pa gyud ka days, no? Days 8 and 9 no, centered around the testimony of NBI Director Melvin Matibag. So that's just my view, no? And if I'm looking at also on the part of the defense, because ninaog man, in my case, a little bit, I'm not saying major, ninaog ang momentum, dinhipod ni Saka ang momentum sa defense because they took advantage, no? They took advantage on creating doubt, no? That whether ang Vice President really had an intent to say it, no? But I'll look into that later when I'll discuss on the side of the defense. So, on the prosecution side, ni-end sila, in my view, nga yes, authentic ang video, but we're not able to clearly establish whether there really was an intent, no, of the Vice President, whether ni contact ba gyud siya assassin, no, to actually that if she's killed, she would order also the killing, no, of the president, the first lady, and the former House Speaker. Diha nga part wala na kaayo nako na klaro, no, as an everyday Filipino, as an everyday Cebuano, no. Now on the end po, because ang lead prosecutor is si Congressman Jervil Luistro, no, what I like about her, at least so far, because makaroon ako nga she's not relying on theatrics even if this is a court of public opinion. So mas maayon tag mga artista, no, if we go that route, although it's not recommended, but what I'm just saying is it's tempting, no, to use theatrics. But what I like about her, and I think she's the lead strategist, no, ang ako lang observation, is they really stick on the narrative. They really stick on the methodology, no, and the organization of the presentation. So she did not rely on theatrics, no, and that I think is kanang the strongest point as far as kanang the prosecution through Congresswoman Jervil Luistro, no, was concerned, no, kay murag siya man ang ni-take og center stage on the prosecution side in days 8 and 9. However, I will have to go back to what I said. But she and the prosecution stopped short, in my view, no, convincing the senator judges, including the public, that the president truly crossed the constitutional threshold. No, everybody's threshold, that's another story, but constitutional threshold, not clear. No, so kanang the prosecution ventured close to that, no, that's why gibutang nila sa witness stand si NBI Director Melvin Matibag, no, pero the farthest it could go, especially, no, when Senate presiding officer eventually made a statement, oh, this is really just about the investigation process and it does not really support intent, etc., but I'll deal with that later. But the presence actually, or the testimony of the NBI Director through also the presentation, no, of Congressman Jervil Luistro was not able to present a substantive evidence that there truly was an intent to do it, no. So now let's go to the defense. More or less you have an idea, no, on what I would also say on the defense. I'll have to say that the defense was consistent in terms of being effective, but on the final day, in my view, was an everyday Cebuano. They were able to create doubt whether the Vice President truly had the intent to do what she said she would do. No? So I'll start with their strong points. So, wala nila gi-atake ang video, but they stick to the narrative, no, na it was a political speech, no. It's a political hyperbole. No, so it's not stated to actually create harm, no, on those she mentioned, but it was more of a political speech, no, and so this surfaced the thought, I think, on the senator judges to this side. Yes, the comment was offensive. It's true. The political speech was offensive. That might be true, but is it enough to justify removal from public office, no? Kana na hold gid na sa defense, no, kanang strongly, no. So and then I'll have to also, well, give good words, no. I mean, ako as an everyday Cebuano, kanang nindot pagkadala ni attorney Mark Binluan, no. So if I would be a lawyer someday, and I don't think I would, but just in case, but even on my everyday dealings, ganahan ko sa iya ang approach that he's actually calm. Dili siya atat ba to go for the kill. And on a leadership standpoint, manggod, that's an important trait. Kay usually diha man ta magkasipyat-sipyat when we become so attached to the outcome, muna gitawag na to nga atat, or when we become very emotional, no, towards our argument. But in the course of his arguments, he was actually calm and he was listening intently. And then that's when he would go for the kill. Motong na we would have wanted to show certain statements no nga klaro yun kayo nga he would lead the witness to the trap and then takluban niya, no? So one of those that I could remember was katong 29 years of experience as a lawyer. For me, the witness was led into that, and then he went for the kill, no? So and I think that's really an advantage, no? Nga kanang when we remain calm, kaya ako di man sad ko calm. So when we remain calm and we listen intently, because that's when we would be able to react accordingly, no? Not react according to our emotion, but react to what's happening, no? To react properly to the situation. And then, as I've mentioned earlier, at this point, which is the end pagyod, no, of the fourth article, they were able to surface, no, reasonable kanang doubt about the intent. The underlying question na balik-balik, even if it was not stated explicitly, is if the Vice President truly had an intent to do what she said she would do, where is the proof? Yes, she said it by the video and it's authentic. But where is your proof that she truly had the intent to say what she said? I mean, to do what she said she would do. So they created that reasonable na bitaw na posible nga she did not have the intent. She just said it, no? So I'm not saying nga kanang guilty or not guilty, but the doubt lang ba on when I look at the final days, no? And then for me, sad, medyo na it's somebody siya. It's not a surprise nga mo surface ang affidavit, no, ni Arturo Las Cañas, pero medyo na surprise ko kung unsay relevance. And true enough, the defense also gihammer pud nila ang integrity of the document, no. But before we go into that route, kay this is also one of the central kanang arguments man on days 8 and 9, no, is if we recall, kani si Arturo Las Cañas, no, is a retired police officer, and mo ni siya ang ni-testify about the Davao Death Squad, no, and about the former president Rodrigo Duterte's role, no, in the Davao Death Squad, no, the alleged Davao Death Squad. So he served in the National Police at that time, and he was assigned in the Davao City office. But if we recall, in 2016, he said na wala siya'y labot, and he did not know about it. And then in 2017, he recanted his statement and said it really, the Davao Death Squad, the alleged Davao Death Squad is really true. And in fact, he was part of them. No? So, na siya'y flip-flopping na precedents. The other thing also is daghan sad ni siya og mga kaso, no? If we look at the Davao City Regional Trial Court Branch 10, nani siya mga arrest warrants on online libel, murder, attempted murder. So he has several kanang cases, no, for that were filed against him for years. And so when the NBI considered, through the testimony of NBI Director Melvin Matibag, when the NBI considered his affidavit as where they anchor their argument, is only successfully raise doubt, no, instead of strengthening their claim. in my view, no? As not as a lawyer, but as an everyday Cebuano. So that's why the defense, in a calm manner, attacked the document's credibility. And true enough, they were able to surface that the affidavit was unsigned, and it's not notarized. So they called it's just a scrap piece of paper, no? And in fact, Las Cañas, as I stated earlier, has a flip-flopping kanang pattern. So if an affidavit that was said to be written by him, said to be, because it was unsigned, it was unnotarized, then what's the value, no, of that affidavit for the NBI to actually rely on, no? Kaya murag dito man sila ni-rely and it's unsigned and unnotarized, no? So that's why the presiding officer, muna kong gimension earlier, si Senator Cheese Escudero, kanang draw the line, no, on evidentiary line, no? Draw the evidentiary line, because he said that yes, the affidavit is fine because it explains the NBI's investigative process, but it is not proof to the allegations that whether the vice president truly had an intent. So, mo na akong yung kaganina nga, as an everyday Cebuano, that's when it dawned on me, so nga nung nagstorya pamantaan, we were just prolonging the conversation, and all it did was just present an investigative process. It's not an evidence to the vice president's intent. So, murag na prolong lang ang conversation, and it did not have value. And again, i-couple na to na siya sa public's waning interest, then murag, for me, it did more kanang damage than harm, no? In my case, more damage than good, no? Ang katong utilization of that affidavit. And in my view, sad, whether we like the senator or we don't, but kato na malandong sad ko adto sa iyang statement, because it applies to kanang kitang everyday people ba, when we say things about others, especially bad things about others. Kanang she actually raised a profound statement, no, when she said na careful ta sa kanang atong mga ipang presenta in public ba, in our words, especially because the people cannot unhear what they already heard. No, or the people cannot unsee what they already saw. So, actually, sige lang, no, para makita ninyo nga, I'm not just favoring one, but it struck a chord on me because di man kayo ganahan ng chismis good, and kanang aligned din siya because I've read magud somewhere po, ang other version po nila is when we say allegations on other people without the proof, it's like dropping a feather. You go into the church bell tower, you drop the feather, and even if you're sorry about what you did, but you cannot collect the feathers, all of them, ever again. So mo nang careful ta about kanang saying kanang unverified kanang statements, no. So when the Senator Judge Pia Cayetano said that, it struck a chord on me, no. We can careful ta because we cannot unhear what we already heard and unsee what we already saw. So, before I'll end today's episode, in my view, ang day 9 ended with the defense, no, providing an opportunity that the prosecution is relying on a questionable material, and so it casted doubt, no, on whether the vice president's action is actually impeachable. So, the prosecution was organized, methodical, did not rely on theatrics, and they anchored their argument on an authentic video that the vice president actually said what she would do. But they still need to persuade the senator judges that whether there really was an intent to do it. And on the other side, the defense was also constrained because of that video, because nobody could say that it was not authentic, that it was a fake video. No, the vice president really said it. So the defense was also constrained by that. No, but they were also able to challenge, that was that an exercise of freedom of speech, Was that a political speech, And was the intent for her to do what she said she would do was indeed proven. And in my case, they were able to raise reasonable doubt, So the prosecution remains to be stronger and factual, while the defense, in my view as an everyday person, not a lawyer, has a stronger constitutional argument. And if we recall, this is more of a constitutional proceeding, rather than a criminal proceeding. So in my view, slightly ni-end ang silang tawagan ni-end ang season 1 sa impeachment trial. Okay, that was the end. And then magsona ta on Monday. So niingon sila, and I would agree, ni-end ang season 1 with the defense slightly, in my view, having the upper hand. So let's see if the trend will continue after the break. Nag-break man sila, and then season 2 will start again. This time on the Vice President, her husband, and the corporations attached to them's financial records. Let's see how that will go. And by the way, before I close, if you have followed Philippine politics long enough you may have instinctively expected former Senator Trillanes to surface in all these. But there's a plot twist. He's completely silent, after creating so much noise about the Senate changes, siya pag iniadto dito to issue the warrant. That was how engaged he was, And then, where is he in all these? Natingala lang ko. Where is he in all this? But anyhow, so as the prosecution closes its presentation on Article 4, the questions before the Senate become even more defined. The issue is no longer whether the statements were made by the Vice President. The issue is what those statements mean under the Constitution. For now, Article 4 is in the hands of the senator judges. So I'm DJ Moises. Thanks as well to Coffee First for supporting conversations that matter. Until next time, let's continue to look deeper and think better. Have a good afternoon.
It starts with a fresh shot of espresso. Bold, rich, pulled just right. Then comes the milk, steamed smooth, creamy, and balanced. The perfect latte is not rushed. It is crafted, one cup at a time. Your perfect latte is ready. Coffee first, then everything else.